Has your family ever excluded you from a holiday vacation over just one silent request? My story will make you rethink every sacrifice you've ever made for the people closest to you. Because sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones plotting behind your back with your own money. I'm Jennifer, and for 2 years I opened my home and my heart to my little sister, Emily, and her husband, David. What started as temporary help became a permanent arrangement that was slowly draining my bank account and my sanity. But I had no idea that my generosity was being used as a weapon against me. It was a Tuesday evening in early December, and I was doing what I always did, preparing dinner for 3 people in my own kitchen. Emily sat at my dining table, scrolling through her phone, while David watched my Netflix on my couch. Neither of them offered to help, but that was normal now. I'd stopped expecting it months ago. "Dinner's ready," I called out, setting down plates of homemade lasagna that had taken me 2 hours to prepare after my 10-hour workday. Emily looked up from her phone just long enough to say, "Thanks, Jen," before immediately returning to whatever was more important than acknowledging the meal I'd just cooked for her. This was my life. Every morning I'd wake up in my house and pay my mortgage while Emily and David slept in my guest room. I'd pay the electric bill that covered their late-night gaming sessions. I'd buy groceries that they'd eat without replacing. I'd come home to find them comfortable in my living space, never lifting a finger to maintain the home they lived in rent-free. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't keeping score in the beginning. When Emily first asked if she and David could stay just for a few months while they got back on their feet, I didn't hesitate. Family helps family, right? That's what our parents taught us growing up. Emily had always been the creative one, the dreamer, while I was the practical one with the stable job and the 3-bedroom house. But a few months had stretched into 2 full years. Emily claimed she was looking for work, but her job search seemed to consist mainly of scrolling through social media and complaining about how unfair the job market was. David had a part-time gig at a local restaurant, but his paychecks seemed to disappear on energy drinks and video games, rather than contributing to household expenses. I'd done the math more than once during sleepless nights. Between mortgage, utilities, groceries, and incidentals, I was supporting them under the tune of about $2,000 a month. Over 2 years, that was nearly $50,000 of my hard-earned money. But they were family, and family was supposed to come first. The warning signs were there if I'd been willing to see them. Emily never offered to do laundry, even though she was home all day. David treated my house like a hotel, leaving his dishes in the sink and his clothes on the bathroom floor. When my parents visited, they'd praise Emily for trying her best and going through a tough time, while barely acknowledging that I was the one making it all possible. But I ignored every red flag because I loved my sister. I wanted to be the reliable big sister who could fix everything. I wanted to be the family hero who swooped in and saved the day. What I didn't know was that my heroic nature was about to be used against me in the most devastating way possible. The Hawaii trip idea came up during one of our family group chats. It was early December, and Mom had just sent a message to our family thread. "What if we did something special for Christmas this year? I've been looking at Hawaii vacation packages." I felt that familiar flutter of excitement in my chest. A family vacation sounded perfect, Emily and David never got to go anywhere because of their financial situation, and I'd been working overtime for months. We all deserved a break. "That sounds amazing, Mom," I typed back immediately. "How much are we looking at per person?" My phone buzzed with responses. Dad chimed in with his enthusiasm. "Patricia, that's a brilliant idea. We haven't had a family vacation in years." Emily sent a series of heart-eye emojis, and David even contributed a rare "I'm in." Mom sent back the details. "I found a great resort package, 5 days, 4 nights. It works out to about $3,000 per person with flights, hotel, and some meals included." I could practically hear the silence through the screen. $3,000 was a significant amount for anyone. But for Emily and David, it might as well have been $30,000. I knew they didn't have that kind of money. Hell, they barely contributed to groceries. Without hesitation, I typed, "I can cover Emily and David's portion. Consider it an early Christmas gift." The responses came flooding in. "Dad, Jennifer, you're too generous. Emily is so lucky to have you." "Mom, that's so sweet, honey. Emily really needs this vacation. She's been so stressed lately." But Emily's response was just, "Thanks." Not "thank you so much," or "I can't believe you're doing this for us," or "how can I ever repay you?" Just, "Thanks." I should have paid attention to that lukewarm response. But I was too caught up in the excitement of planning our family getaway. I immediately started researching the resort, looking up the best restaurants nearby, checking what activities we could do together. I even created a shared Pinterest board with outfit ideas and must-see locations. Over the next week, I threw myself into planning mode. I called the resort to upgrade us to ocean view rooms. I made reservations at the top-rated restaurants. I researched snorkeling tours and sunset cruises. In my mind, this was going to be the perfect family bonding experience. I'd already invested $6,000, $3,000 for Emily, and $3,000 for David, plus countless hours of planning. Every evening after work, I'd research something new we could do together. I imagined us laughing over tropical drinks, taking family photos on the beach, creating memories that would last forever. Emily seemed oddly quiet during my planning updates. When I'd excitedly share a restaurant I'd found or an activity I'd booked, she'd just nod and say, "Sounds good." I attributed it to financial stress. She was probably feeling guilty about not being able to contribute financially to the trip I was planning for her. David was even less engaged, usually just grunting acknowledgement when I tried to include him in planning conversations. But again, I made excuses for their behavior. They were probably just overwhelmed by my generosity and didn't know how to express their gratitude. The group chat stayed active with Mom and Dad, discussing flight times and packing lists. I contributed enthusiastically to every conversation, sharing links and ideas. But as the days passed, I started noticing something odd. Sometimes there would be references to conversations I didn't remember having. Little details that seemed to appear out of nowhere. "Like we discussed, we should probably book that catamaran tour," Mom would write. But I didn't remember discussing any catamaran tour. When I'd ask about it, someone would say, "Oh, didn't we mention it yesterday?" But there was no mention of it in our group chat. I started feeling like I was losing track of our planning, which was weird because I'm usually obsessively organized. But I chalked it up to holiday stress and work pressure. I figured I was just forgetting some of our conversations. The turning point came on a Wednesday evening, exactly 3 weeks before our scheduled departure. Emily was sitting on my couch, her usual spot, scrolling through her phone while I cleaned up the kitchen after another dinner I'd cooked for all of us. I needed to ask her about luggage because I was planning to buy new suitcases for the trip. Em, do you want to come with me this weekend to look at luggage? I thought we could get matching sets for the trip. She looked up from her phone with an expression I couldn't quite read. Yeah, sure, whatever. Her phone buzzed with a notification, and as she moved to check it, the screen lit up with a group chat I'd never seen before. The name at the top made my blood freeze. Hawaii trip, final plans. My sister was in a group chat about our Hawaii trip that didn't include me. For a moment, my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. I stood there, dish towel in my hands, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was a different Hawaii trip. Maybe it was an old chat from before we started planning. But then I saw the recent timestamps. Messages from today. Messages from Mom and Dad. Messages about our trip. Emily, I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. What's that group chat? She immediately flipped her phone face down, but it was too late. I'd seen enough. What group chat? She asked, but her face had gone pale. The Hawaii trip chat, the one that says final plans. I set down the dish towel and walked toward the couch. Why is there a Hawaii planning chat that I'm not in? Emily's eyes darted toward the hallway where David was taking a shower. It's nothing, Jen, just, logistics stuff. Logistics for the trip I'm paying for? The trip I've been planning for weeks? My voice was getting louder, but I couldn't help it. What logistics could you possibly need to discuss without me? That's when Emily made the mistake that changed everything. She tried to grab her phone, but her hands were shaking and she fumbled it. The phone clattered to the floor, face up, and the screen lit up again. I could see 3 new messages from the group chat. Mom, Emily asked us not to invite Jennifer. She needs space. Dad, Jennifer won't understand, but Emily's mental health comes first. David, finally some family time without the helicopter sister. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually staggered backward, my hand reaching for the wall to steady myself. My whole body started shaking as the reality crashed over me. They were planning to go to Hawaii without me, using my money, while living in my house. Jennifer, I can explain, Emily started, but I was already walking toward her phone. Don't. My voice came out as barely a whisper. I picked up her phone and she didn't try to stop me. She knew she was caught. I scrolled up through the messages, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. 3 weeks of secret planning. 3 weeks of them coordinating behind my back, while I researched restaurants and booked activities and got excited about our family bonding time. Emily, I'm so relieved she's not coming. I need this vacation to be about US. Mom, are you sure about this, honey? She's paying for everything. Emily, she'll be fine. She loves playing the martyr anyway. David, trust me, Patricia, this trip will be so much better without her hovering over everything. Dad, if this is what Emily needs for her mental health, then we support it. I kept scrolling, watching my family plan my exclusion in real time. They'd rebooked the rooms I'd reserved. They'd canceled the activities I'd planned and booked different ones. They'd even planned different flights to make sure I couldn't show up at the airport and force my way onto the trip I was funding. The most devastating part was reading how they talked about me. Helicopter sister, martyr, hovering, controlling. These were the people I'd sacrificed everything for, and this was how they saw me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Emily was saying something, but I couldn't hear her over the ringing in my ears. 3 weeks. They'd been planning this betrayal for 3 weeks while I excitedly planned what I thought was our family vacation. I looked up at Emily, who was now crying, not from guilt, but from being caught. "How long?" I asked. "Jen, please, let me explain." "How long have you been planning to exclude me from the trip I'm paying for?" She wiped her nose on her sleeve, my sleeve, since she was wearing my sweatshirt. "It's not about excluding you, it's about, I just needed some space. Some family time that wasn't about you taking care of everyone." Family time. I repeated the words slowly. Without the family member who's making it financially possible. "You always make everything about money," she snapped, and there it was, the real Emily coming out. "Not everything is about what you pay for." "You're right," I said, surprising her. "It's about trust. It's about honesty. It's about not stabbing your sister in the back while she's planning a vacation for you with her own money." David appeared in the hallway, his hair still wet from the shower. He took one look at our faces and knew exactly what had happened. "Shit," he muttered. "Yeah," I said, still holding Emily's phone. "Shit is right." The next hour was a masterclass in manipulation that I'll never forget. Emily cycled through every tactic in the book: denial, gaslighting, blame shifting, victim playing, and emotional blackmail. First came the denial. "You're misunderstanding the messages. We weren't excluding you, we were just making backup plans in case you had to work." When I showed her the screenshots I'd already taken, she switched to gaslighting. "You're being paranoid. You're twisting everything to make it sound worse than it is." Then came the blame shifting. "Maybe if you weren't so controlling about everything, we wouldn't have felt like we needed our own planning space." David jumped in with his contribution. "Honestly, Jen, you do kind of take over every situation. We just wanted to plan some stuff on our own for once." But the victim playing was what really got to me. "I'm sorry I'm such a burden to you. I'm sorry my mental health isn't as important as your need to control everything. I just thought I could have one vacation where I didn't feel like a charity case." "A charity case?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Emily, you are a charity case. You've been living in my house for 2 years without paying rent. I just paid $6,000 for you to go on a vacation. The only reason you can afford to have mental health struggles is because I'm paying for your entire life." That's when her mask finally slipped completely. God, there it is, the guilt trip. You can't just do something nice without holding it over my head forever. "I'm not holding anything over your head. I'm pointing out the reality of our situation." I stood up, suddenly feeling calmer than I had all evening. "You're sitting in my living room, wearing my clothes after eating my food, complaining about me paying for your vacation while secretly planning to exclude me from it." David tried a different approach. "Look, Jennifer, we appreciate everything you do, but Emily's been really struggling lately, and she thought she could use my money to buy a vacation away from me." I cut him off, "while living in my house, rent-free." Emily was crying harder now, but I noticed it was angry crying, not remorseful crying. "Fine, you want to make this about money? Maybe I should just leave then." "Maybe you should." The words came out of my mouth before I'd consciously decided to say them. But the moment they hung in the air, I realized how right they felt. Emily's face went white. "What did you say? Maybe you should leave?" I looked around my living room that I'd been sharing for 2 years with people who apparently thought I was controlling and helicopter-ish and martyred. If I'm such a burden to be around, if my presence ruins your family experiences, if my house feels so oppressive to you, maybe you should find somewhere else to live. David jumped up from the couch. "Whoa, hold on. You're being crazy right now. This is about a vacation, not about where we live. No, this is about respect. This is about honesty. This is about the fact that you've been living in my house for 2 years, eating my food, using my utilities, sleeping in my bed, all while talking behind my back about what a controlling helicopter sister I am." I walked to the kitchen counter and grabbed my laptop. "Do you know what I did this afternoon, Emily? I spent my lunch break researching that catamaran tour Mom mentioned. You know, the one that was never mentioned in our group chat because you were discussing it in your secret chat. I was trying to book something special for us." My fingers flew across the keyboard as I pulled up my banking app. "Do you want to know how much I've spent on you two in the past 2 years? Not just rent, but everything. Food, utilities, that time David's car needed repairs, Emily's doctor visits, Christmas gifts, birthday gifts." The number on my screen made my stomach turn. $47,836. Nearly $50,000 I'd spent supporting 2 people who thought I was a controlling martyr. $47,000. I turned the laptop screen toward them. And that's how much I've invested in people who apparently can't stand spending a vacation with me. Emily was speechless for the first time all evening. David looked like he was going to be sick. "But you know what the worst part is?" I continued. "It's not the money. It's not even the secret planning. It's that you were going to let me keep paying for and planning a trip that I wasn't invited to. You were going to let me research restaurants and book activities and get excited about family bonding time, knowing the whole time that you never intended for me to be there." The silence stretched between us, heavy with 2 years of resentment that was finally surfacing. "So here's what's going to happen," I said, closing my laptop. "You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live." Emily's mouth fell open. "You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life." "Jennifer, please," David started, but I held up my hand. I'm done. I'm done being taken advantage of. I'm done being manipulated. I'm done supporting people who think so little of me that they'll plan family vacations specifically to exclude me. I looked directly at Emily. "If you need space from me so badly that you'll coordinate a secret family conspiracy behind my back, then you can have all the space you want, starting with finding your own space to live." Emily tried one last manipulation tactic, the nuclear option. "If you kick us out, I'll never speak to you again." I looked at her for a long moment, this person I'd loved and supported and sacrificed for, and felt nothing. No fear, no guilt, no desperate need to fix things, just peace. "Emily," I said quietly, "based on how you really feel about me, that sounds like your choice, not my loss." For the first time in 2 years, I went to bed in my own house, feeling like it was actually mine. Tomorrow I would make it official. Tonight I would sleep peacefully, knowing that I was finally done being anyone's charity case provider. The relationship dynamics in my house were about to change permanently. And for the first time in a long time, I was the one making that decision. I woke up the next morning with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The emotional storm of the night before had settled into something much more powerful: determination. Emily and David were still asleep in my guest room, probably exhausted from their performance last night. But I was already dressed and making coffee when my phone started buzzing. It was Mom, calling at 7:30 in the morning. I let it go to voicemail. Then Dad called. Voicemail, then Mom again. I turned my phone face down and focused on what I needed to do. This wasn't about emotion anymore. This was about protecting myself legally and financially, and I knew I couldn't afford to make any mistakes. My first call was to my friend Marcus, who happened to be a real estate attorney. I'd helped him move last year, and he'd always said to call if I ever needed legal advice. Well, today was that day. "Jennifer, everything okay?" Marcus sounded concerned when he answered. "I need to evict someone from my house, and I need to make sure I do it right. Can you walk me through the legal requirements?" There was a pause. "Are we talking about tenants or guests?" "Guests who have overstayed their welcome by about 18 months. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Okay, let me grab my coffee, and we'll talk through this. But first, are you sure this is what you want to do? Evicting family can get messy." "Marcus, they've been living in my house, rent-free for 2 years, while secretly planning family vacations to exclude me. I'm past worrying about messy." "Fair enough, let's talk legal strategy." The conversation was enlightening, since Emily and David had never paid rent and weren't on any lease. They were legally considered guests, not tenants. That actually made things easier in some ways. I had more rights as a homeowner to ask them to leave. But California still required me to give them reasonable notice, which Marcus recommended should be 30 days in writing. "Document everything," he advised. "Every conversation, every text message, every interaction. If this goes sideways, you'll want a paper trail that shows you handled this properly." "What if they refuse to leave?" "After the 30 days are up, you can file for an unlawful detainer action. But honestly, most people don't want the hassle and expense of fighting an eviction, especially when they know they don't have legal ground to stand on." By the time I hung up with Marcus, I had a clear plan. I spent my lunch break drafting a formal 30-day notice to quit. I kept the language professional and emotionless. "Emily Martinez and David Chen, you are hereby notified to quit and surrender possession of the premises located at my address to the owner within 30 days after service of this notice upon you. Your tenancy of said premises is hereby terminated. If you fail to quit and surrender possession of said premises within the time specified, legal proceedings will be instituted against you to recover possession of said premises." I printed it on official letterhead, dated it December 20th, and made multiple copies. I even researched proper service requirements. I could serve it personally or have someone else serve it as a witness. That's when I called my friend Maria. She'd been watching this whole situation unfold for months, and she'd never been shy about telling me that Emily and David were taking advantage of me. "You finally grew a spine," was her first reaction when I told her what happened. "I've been waiting for this call for 2 years. Will you come over tonight to witness me serving the notice? I want everything documented properly." "Hell yes, I'll bring my phone." "To record everything too. These people have been bleeding you dry, and it's about time you stood up for yourself. The rest of my workday dragged by. I kept checking my phone, seeing missed calls, and increasingly frantic text messages from my parents. Emily had clearly called them with her version of events, and they were in full damage control mode. Dad's text, "Jennifer, Emily is hysterical. She says you're kicking them out over a misunderstanding about the vacation. Please call me." Mom's text, "Honey, I know you're upset, but this seems extreme. Emily made a mistake, but she's family. Can't we work this out?" I didn't respond to any of them. I'd learned enough about manipulation tactics to know that Emily was probably playing the victim hard right now, painting me as the unreasonable sister who exploded over nothing. But I had screenshots of their secret group chat. I had 2 years of financial records. I had the truth on my side. When I got home, Emily and David were sitting at my kitchen table, a kitchen table I'd bought in a house I paid for, looking like they'd been waiting for me all day. Emily's eyes were red and puffy, but there was something calculating in her expression that told me the tears were more strategic than sincere. "Jen, we need to talk," Emily started the moment I walked through the door. "Actually, we don't." I set my purse down and pulled out the formal notice. "But I do need to give you something." Maria arrived exactly on time, as I knew she would. She greeted Emily and David politely, but I could see the disgust in her eyes. She'd watched me stress about money for months, never knowing it was because I was supporting 2 adults who contributed nothing to my household. "What's she doing here?" David asked suspiciously. "Maria is here as a witness," I said calmly, pulling out my phone to start recording. "I'm serving you with formal notice to vacate these premises." The change in the room's atmosphere was immediate. Emily's tears stopped like someone had flipped a switch. David straightened up in his chair. They'd been expecting another emotional confrontation they could manipulate their way out of. They weren't expecting legal paperwork. I read the notice aloud, clearly and professionally, while Maria recorded everything. Emily's face went through a series of expressions: disbelief, anger, bargaining, and finally, panic. "You're actually serious?" she whispered when I finished reading. "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." "Jennifer, this is insane," David jumped in. "You're destroying your family over a vacation that hasn't even happened yet." "I'm protecting myself from people who think so little of me that they'll coordinate behind my back to exclude me from events I'm paying for." I handed him his copy of the notice. "You have 30 days to find alternative housing. I will not be providing financial assistance for your move or your new living situation." Emily tried her tears again. "Please, Jen, I'm sorry. I made a mistake, but I can't afford to move out. I don't have anywhere to go." "You should have thought about that before you decided you needed space from your helicopter sister." I quoted her own words back to her from the group chat. That's when David made the mistake that sealed their fate. He stood up aggressively, trying to use his size to intimidate me. "You can't just kick us out because your feelings got hurt. We have rights." Maria immediately stepped closer to me, her phone still recording. "Actually, you don't have rights. This isn't your house. You don't pay rent, you're not on a lease, and you've been freeloading off Jennifer for 2 years." "This doesn't concern you," David snapped at Maria. "It concerns me when I watch my friend get taken advantage of by family members who should be protecting her. not exploiting her. Emily tried a different approach. What about Mom and Dad? They're going to be devastated if you tear the family apart like this. Mom and Dad made their choice when they participated in excluding me from a family vacation I was funding. They chose sides, Emily. They didn't choose mine. My phone buzzed with another call from Mom. I declined it and kept talking. Here's what's going to happen. You have until January 20th to find somewhere else to live. All utilities will remain in my name only. I will not be providing references for rental applications, and I will not be providing financial assistance for deposits, rent, or moving expenses. Jennifer, please, Emily's voice broke, and for a moment I almost felt bad. Almost. I know I messed up, but I can't survive without your help. You're about to learn how. David tried one more intimidation tactic. You know what? Fine, we'll leave. But don't expect us to come crawling back when you realize how lonely you're going to be in this big house all by yourself. I looked around my living room, my beautiful, spacious living room that I'd worked so hard to afford, and smiled. David, the thought of having my house to myself sounds like paradise. After they stormed off to the guest room, Maria and I sat in my kitchen reviewing the footage she'd recorded. Everything was documented perfectly. Their reactions, their attempts at manipulation, their threats, and my calm, professional responses. How do you feel? Maria asked. Terrified, I admitted, but also free. For the first time in 2 years, I feel like I can breathe in my own house. My phone had been buzzing nonstop with calls from my parents. Finally, I answered. Jennifer Marie Martinez, what is going on? Mom's voice was shrill with panic. Emily called me crying, saying, you're kicking her out on the street. I'm giving her 30 days' notice to find her own housing, which is more generous than she deserves. Over a vacation? This seems incredibly extreme. Mom, it's not about the vacation. It's about the systematic manipulation, the financial exploitation, and the complete lack of respect for me as a person and as the homeowner who's been supporting them for 2 years. Emily says you're being dramatic and blowing everything out of proportion. Emily has been living in my house rent-free for 2 years, while I've supported her to the tune of nearly $50,000. Last night, I discovered that she's been secretly planning family vacations to specifically exclude me while using my money to fund them. If you think that's me being dramatic, then maybe you need to reconsider whose side you're really on. There was silence on the other end of the line. $50,000, Dad's voice came through. Apparently, I was on speaker. $47,836 to be exact. I have every receipt, every bank statement, every grocery bill. Would you like me to email you the spreadsheet? More silence. Jennifer, honey, we had no idea it was that much money, Mom said quietly. You had no idea because nobody ever asked. Everyone just assumed I was happy to carry the financial burden while Emily figured her life out. Well, Emily's had 2 years to figure it out, and instead of gratitude, I got betrayal. But she's your sister, Dad said weakly, and I'm your daughter. Where was your concern for my feelings when you were all planning a vacation to exclude me? Where was your worry about family harmony when Emily asked you not to invite me to a trip I was paying for? I could hear them whispering to each other in the background, probably realizing for the first time that they'd been manipulated too. We made a mistake, Mom finally said. Yes, you did, and the consequence of that mistake is that I'm no longer available to be the family ATM. Emily and David have 30 days to find their own place, and the Hawaii trip they planned without me can proceed exactly as they intended, without me. What if we canceled the trip? Dad offered. What if we all stayed home for Christmas and worked this out as a family? The trip isn't the problem, Dad. The trip is just the symptom. The problem is that I've been treated like a bank account, with no feelings for 2 years, and I'm done. After I hung up, my house felt different, quieter, but in a good way. Emily and David had locked themselves in the guest room, probably calling everyone they knew to complain about how unreasonable I was being. But for the first time in months, I cooked dinner for one person, watched what I wanted to watch on my own TV, and went to bed without listening for other people moving around my house. Christmas morning arrived gray and quiet. I woke up in my own bed, in my own house, with absolutely no one to take care of but myself. The silence was profound and peaceful in a way I'd almost forgotten was possible. My phone had exactly 0 morning calls from family members, which told me they were all together at the airport, beginning their Hawaii adventure without me. I made coffee for one, read the news in my pajamas, and didn't feel sorry for myself even once. Around noon, my extended family started calling with questions. Apparently, Emily's version of events wasn't holding up under scrutiny from relatives who knew me better. Aunt Susan called Mom, asking why you weren't in Hawaii. My cousin Mike texted me. Emily told her you were too busy with work to vacation. Aunt Susan said that sounded like bullshit, because you never turned down family time. What's really going on? I sent Mike a simple response. Ask me again when they get back from the trip I paid for, but wasn't invited to. His response was immediate. What the fuck? Are you serious? Over the next few days, the truth started spreading through our extended family network. I wasn't actively gossiping about Emily. I didn't need to. People started asking questions when they realized I wasn't in any of the Hawaii photos, and Emily's explanations weren't making sense. Aunt Susan called me directly on December 27th. Jennifer, I need to understand what's happening. Emily posted a photo of the family at some fancy restaurant last night, with the caption, "Finally a peaceful family vacation, but you're nowhere to be seen." When I asked your mother where you were, she got very uncomfortable and changed the subject. Aunt Susan, Emily asked Mom and Dad to exclude me from the Hawaii trip because she wanted space from her helicopter sister. They agreed and planned the entire vacation without me, using money I provided. You paid for a vacation you weren't invited to? I paid for Emily and David's portions before I knew I was being excluded, $6,000. The silence on Aunt Susan's end was deafening. Then, those ungrateful little shits. It turned out I wasn't the only family member who'd noticed Emily's pattern of behavior. Aunt Susan reminded me about the $500 Emily had borrowed from Cousin Mike last Christmas and never repaid. Cousin Lisa shared that Emily had asked to stay at her place just for a week 2 summers ago and had stretched it into 6 weeks before Lisa had to physically pack her bags. She's been doing this to everyone, Aunt Susan said, taking advantage of family loyalty and then playing victim when people set boundaries. The difference is, the rest of us wised up faster than you did. The intel I was getting from family members painted a very different picture of the Hawaii trip than Emily's social media posts suggested. According to Aunt Susan, who'd been texting with Mom throughout the trip, Things weren't going as smoothly as Emily was pretending. Without me there to handle logistics and smooth over conflicts, the family dynamics were falling apart. Emily had complained about the resort I'd booked, saying it wasn't fancy enough, even though it was a 4-star property that cost more per night than she'd ever contributed to my household in a month. She demanded that Mom and Dad pay for expensive dinners at restaurants I'd carefully researched and pre-selected, apparently forgetting that I was usually the one who covered those extras. David had gotten drunk at the hotel bar the first night and made a scene when he couldn't figure out how to charge drinks to the room, something I always handled during family trips. Mom had called Aunt Susan crying because Emily was being difficult and demanding without me there, to manage her expectations and smooth things over. "Your mother said something that broke my heart," Aunt Susan told me. "She said I didn't realize how much Jennifer does to make family events actually work. Without her here, Emily is just exhausting." But the most telling detail came from Dad's conversation with Uncle Robert. Apparently, the family was shocked by how much extra money they were spending without me there to handle budgeting and planning. Dad had called Uncle Robert from Hawaii, stressed about unexpected costs, not realizing that I normally absorbed those expenses quietly to keep everyone comfortable. "Your father said," and I quote, "We took Jennifer for granted. She wasn't controlling the trips, she was making them possible." On December 30th, I got a text from Mom. "We need to talk when we get home. I think we made a terrible mistake." I didn't respond immediately. I was busy doing something I hadn't done in 2 years, enjoying my own house. I'd rearranged furniture in the living room, finally set up my home office in the space that had been cluttered with Emily and David's belongings, and started planning how I'd use the $2,000 a month I'd be saving once they moved out. The Hawaii crew returned on December 31st, and the calls started immediately. But I was busy hosting my own New Year's Eve party, something I hadn't been able to do in years because Emily and David always made things awkward with other friends. Maria came over early to help me prepare. "How does it feel having your house back to yourself?" "Like I've been holding my breath for 2 years and can finally exhale." My doorbell rang at exactly 6 p.m. on January 2nd. I looked through the peephole to see Mom and Dad standing on my front porch, looking uncomfortable and tired. Behind them, I could see Emily and David hovering by their car, clearly hoping this would be their ticket back into my good graces. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. "We need to talk," Dad said. "Then we can talk at the coffee shop down the street. My house is no longer available for family meetings." Mom's eyes widened at my tone, but she nodded. That's fair." We met at Starbucks 20 minutes later. I chose a table in the back corner and waited for them to begin. They looked older than when they'd left for Hawaii a week ago, and there was an uncomfortable energy between them that told me their perfect family vacation hadn't been so perfect after all. "We owe you an apology," Mom started. "We should never have agreed to exclude you from the trip. Especially a trip you were paying for," Dad added. We didn't understand the extent of what you've been contributing to Emily's life." "What changed your minds?" I asked. Mom and Dad looked at each other uncomfortably. "Being alone with Emily and David for a week without you there to mediate," Mom admitted. "How we saw sides of them we hadn't noticed before." "Such as?" "Emily complained about everything. Dad said bluntly. The resort you booked, the restaurants you'd researched, the activities you'd planned. Nothing was good enough, but she expected us to pay for upgrades and alternatives. David spent most of the trip drunk and rude to service staff, Mom added. We were embarrassed to be associated with him. But the worst part, Dad continued, was listening to Emily talk about you. She kept making comments about how much better the trip was without you there, how she finally felt free from your controlling behavior. It was ugly, Jennifer, really ugly. Mom leaned forward. We realized we'd been manipulated. Emily painted you as overbearing and controlling, but what you actually were was responsible and generous. Without you there, we saw what Emily is like when she doesn't have you to depend on. She's entitled, Dad said simply, and we enabled it by taking your contributions for granted. I sat quietly, letting them finish. We know we hurt you, Mom said, her voice breaking. We know we violated your trust and participated in something cruel. We're sorry, and we want to make it right. What does making it right look like to you? We want to pay you back for the Hawaii trip, Dad offered. $6,000 plus whatever interest you think is fair. And we want Emily and David to apologize and for all of us to start over as a family, Mom added hopefully. I looked at these two people who'd raised me, who'd taught me about family loyalty and taking care of each other, and I felt sad for them. They still didn't understand what this was really about. The money isn't the issue, I said quietly, and an apology isn't going to fix this. Then what will? Mom asked desperately. Nothing. This isn't something that gets fixed with apologies and repayment. This is about a fundamental breakdown of respect and trust that can't be repaired. Dad frowned. You're saying you can never forgive Emily? I'm saying Emily has shown me exactly who she is, and I believe her. She's someone who will manipulate family members, exploit generosity, and coordinate secret conspiracies to exclude the people who are supporting her. That's not a mistake or a misunderstanding. That's her character. But she's your sister, Mom said weakly, and I'm her sister. Where was her concern for sibling relationships when she was secretly planning to exclude me from family events? We sat in silence for a moment. What about Emily and David's living situation? Dad finally asked. They have until January 20th to find their own place. That timeline hasn't changed. Jennifer, they don't have anywhere to go, Mom pleaded. They have 2.5 weeks to figure it out. That's more time than most people get when they're asked to leave someone's home. We could help them with a deposit on an apartment, Dad offered. Maybe pay their first few months' rent while they get back on their feet. That's your choice, but they won't be doing it from my house. Mom started crying. This is going to destroy our family. Mom, Emily, and David destroyed our family when they decided to coordinate behind my back, to exclude me from events I was funding. I'm just refusing to pretend it didn't happen. After they left, I drove home to find Emily and David's car in my driveway. They were inside my house, using the key I'd never bothered to take back, sitting in my living room like they belonged there. Get out, I said the moment I walked through the door. Jennifer, please. Emily stood up with her hands clasped in front of her like she was praying. Mom and Dad told us what they said to you. I know I messed up, but I want to make this right. You can make it right by being out of my house in 18 days. I talked to some landlords today, David said, like this was supposed to impress me. But everyone wants first month, last month, and security deposit up front. We're looking at $6,000 just to move in somewhere. Sounds expensive. You should have thought about that before you decided that you needed space from me. Emily tried her tears again. Jen, I'm sorry, I really am. I was stressed and I said things I didn't mean. But I can't afford to move out right now. Can't we work something out? We did work something out. I gave you 30 days written notice. That's the work out. What if I paid you back for the Hawaii trip? Emily offered desperately. I could get a job and pay you back a little at a time. Emily, you've been looking for work for 2 years. Your promises don't carry much weight with me anymore. David tried a different approach. Look, I know we screwed up with the Hawaii thing, but isn't kicking us out kind of extreme? We're family. David, you've been living in my house for 2 years without contributing a single dollar to household expenses. You've eaten my food, used my utilities, and treated my home like your personal hotel. And your contribution to family dynamics was to call me a helicopter sister who ruins vacations. You can take your family loyalty speech and peddle it somewhere else. They tried arguing, pleading, and guilt-tripping for another hour, but I was done. I'd seen behind the mask. I'd read their real opinions of me. I'd watched them coordinate to exclude me from my own generosity. When they finally gave up and left, I changed the locks. 18 days later, on moving day, Emily and David were still trying to negotiate. They'd found a tiny 2-bedroom apartment, but the deposit and first month's rent were stretching their limited resources. Emily had finally gotten a job at a retail store, and David was working full-time at the restaurant. But their combined income was about what I used to spend supporting them each month. "This is really it?" Emily asked as she loaded the last box into their borrowed pickup truck. "You're really going to let our relationship end like this?" "I'm not ending our relationship, Emily. I'm changing the terms. If you want to rebuild a relationship with me, it's going to be based on mutual respect, honesty, and boundaries. And it's going to happen while you're living somewhere else." She looked around at my house, my beautiful, spacious, peaceful house, one last time. "I hope you're happy, living here all alone." "I will be." And I was. That night, I cooked dinner for one in my own kitchen, watched my own TV in my own living room, and went to sleep in my own house, knowing that every single thing in it was mine. No one was going to eat my food without replacing it, use my utilities without contributing to them, or coordinate behind my back to exclude me from my own generosity. 6 months later, Emily texted me, "I'm ready to work on our relationship if you are." I responded, "I'm glad to hear you're ready. When you're ready to take responsibility for your actions, demonstrate genuine change over time, and respect the boundaries I've established, we can talk about rebuilding trust. Until then, I hope you're doing well." She never responded to that text. Sometimes family isn't about blood relation. Sometimes it's about finding people who treat you with the respect and consideration you deserve. I learned that lesson the hard way, but I learned it thoroughly. My house is still peaceful, my bank account is still healthy, and I am still done being anyone's financial doormat, even if they share my DNA. Especially if they share my DNA.